Hi, everyone. Justin, would you make sure that I'm in the frame of that camera and that my head isn't chopped off? Someone, just to make sure that, like, I'm actually in the shot.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Great. That's all I care about.
I'm gonna come down just to...
Yeah,
No,
tilt
not
it
even
slightly
a
if
bit.
you
You're
want.
at the top of here. You're good.
Perfect. Great. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Gross, and I'm going to talk about 10 reasons why 2001: A Space Odyssey doesn't suck. Like my college roommate said I did. He was probably just tired of how many times I watched this movie.
Okay, which college is it?
It was David.
Oh my god, roast him, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. So, before we go any further, has anyone actually seen this movie before?
I saw it because of you.
Fiona saw it because of me. You've seen it?
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
Many.
Many times? Right on. I'm preaching to the choir on this one. That's what we'd like to hear. All right. Anyway, going to talk to you about why this movie does not suck. All right. First of all, we're going to talk about the cultural impact that this movie has had. So it came out in 1968, I believe, so it's had lots of time to impact culture. Most recently, the Barbie movie that came out this year has the entire opening scene as a direct ripoff of the opening scene of 2001. So we can see Barbie here and 2001 here. This is from the 2005 Willy Wonka. The Simpsons have so many references to this movie, I could not fit them all onto this slide. They have like 15 episodes at least that have different references to 2001: A Space Odyssey. So that's this whole middle column here. Gorillaz has references to it. David Bowie, when he was very stoned watching this movie, and that's how he came up with the idea for his song Space Oddity. The Metal Gear series, Justin.
What?
It's director Hideo Kojima's favorite movie of all time.
No, it's actually Mad Max.
Is it Mad Max? Well, I also love
2015.
I love Mad Max. Well, okay, that's fair.
I'm sorry.
No problem. It was his favorite until 2015, apparently. But a couple of the character names are named after characters in 2001. I actually have just been watching that movie this week, so I love that movie a lot too. The Who, their cover is directly influenced, again, by this monolith image here. I mentioned Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. WALL-E has a number of references. Here's a very obvious one. This is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. There's a Wonka bar here that they pull out of the scene with the apes.
Wait, is that like a remake of Charlie? Yeah.
It's the 2005 version with Johnny Depp. Yeah. This is not an exhaustive list. There are many, many references to this movie because it just has a lot of memorable visuals. And so that's one reason this movie does not suck. Another reason this movie does not suck is because it was really ahead of its time, which makes it kind of boring to watch now. It has an uncut video call scene that feels like it's taking forever. They're talking about like wanting a Bush baby and what they're going to do for their birthday and like it's really boring stuff. It's not interesting. But that's because in 1968, there was no video call from space. That wasn't a thing. So the thing that was interesting was what was happening, and it was mundane and boring to highlight how normal that technology would be in this vision of the future. There also was a ruling between Apple and Samsung that they were trying to decide if the iPad was a new concept or if, Samsung could make tablets as well. And Samsung actually referenced this movie and this scene to be like, hey, tablet computers have been around for a while. We just made one too. They did not have it as it was not upheld in court because there are some differences between this and the iPad and Samsung's tablet. I don't know, legal stuff. But yeah, it's important to remember that these things feel more boring now than they would have when this movie came out. But right, they came true. We have tablets that we can do video calls and watch movies on. That's just a thing that's normal for us now. But there are things in this movie that are still cutting edge. The big thing that this movie centers around is a fear of AI taking over, and that's something we're grappling with right now as we have like the rise of AI art and computerization taking over jobs. So that's a thing that we're still dealing with. I'm going to kind of skim past this one. The cinematography was very groundbreaking in 1968. You can see this gigantic custom-made fisheye lens they used. It was shot on 70 millimeter film, which is basically IMAX. The movie, part of the goal in making this movie was to get people to leave their houses and their TVs and actually go to the theater. So they wanted it to be a really big spectacle. And yeah, they used an old bra factory to make some of the space special effects. They just dumped chemicals under high-speed photography and just like slowed it down and like did all kinds of weird stuff to it to make it look like space. So it's just chemicals in a bra factory. So that's a fun little fact. It is slow as hell, and that would seem like a downside. I actually think that is one of the things that makes this movie so appealing, because it's a really good background movie, especially if you've seen it a couple times. You can just kind of put it on. You can be making dinner, you can be doing your laundry, and you're like, oh, it's the 8 part. Oh, it's the space station part. They're doing the video call. You don't need to listen to that dialogue. It's nice to just kind of have in the background.
And it's got a lot of soundscapes.
It's got a lot of soundscapes, but also it's a very immersive film to watch in a theater. It's got these huge wide shots and just a lot of detail that is captured in that 70 millimeter picture. So it's good for both just a background movie that you're not really paying attention to, or it's something that's very immersive to get to experience in a theater. I've not gotten to see it in IMAX. I really want to. 5, the iPod was named after the pod in this movie. So there's a famous scene where Dave says to Hal, he's like, open the pod bay doors. And that is what inspired the name of the iPod, as well as obviously it's a very visually similar device. And even the relationship between the iPod and the computer was part of the inspiration because the pod like docks inside the spaceship. So that was, a little more subtle reason as well. Influence on other movies, I'm going to skim past this one too. You can see this is 2001 A Space Odyssey, and this is Star Wars A New Hope. Extremely similar frames. Same with this shot here. This is the landing sequence inside 2001. This is from Star Wars A New Hope. These are some other similar sequences in Star Wars in different movies. You can see it's just like they took it right out of 2001. So when you watch 2001, it feels, again, similarly boring because we've seen stuff like this before in Star Wars and in other movies. This is from 2001. This is from Tron Legacy. Again, they literally just took the same kind of like set design. It also created a big sector of the market because before sci-fi movies were considered to be more like B movies. And since then we've gotten movies like Blade Runner and Alien and, Interstellar, all kinds of stuff. And that wasn't really considered to be a category before this movie because it was more like something you would get in a pulp magazine or just, a B movie. I also think this movie, part of what makes it uncomfortable watch or unenjoyable is why it's worth watching. It's imperfect. It's not satisfying at the ending. It doesn't fully make sense when you watch it. And even the lenses that they used to make this movie, at the time, they were some of the sharpest lenses available, and now they're valued for their weird character that they have. And I think that's kind of like what this movie's like. It's like it was trying to be something that was extremely perfect, and it kind of honestly falls short of that a little bit, and that's what keeps me coming back. It's like an itch you can't quite scratch. And I hope people continue to make movies inspired by this one, because there's a lot to build off of with this movie. It has a memorable soundtrack. Most of the movie's soundtrack is classical music, actually. It's very famous to have like I don't even know how to say all that. It's German.
Also,
That. And that is, that also, just that little soundbite has appeared in so many things as like a meme, as vines, whatever. And so that's another thing that I think is great about it. The color palette, I just love the colors in this movie. They're just so simple and punchy, Fiona would probably say they're boring colors, but I really like the colors in this movie. There's just, it sticks to a very limited color palette, and it just makes everything feel cohesive throughout the movie. And I think it feels calming and unsettling at the same time. The last part is that it's just weird as hell. Like, there's a star child. This has been a very popular movie to drop acid to. Someone had a really bad trip in 2010 in a movie theater, and they like got escorted out, and there was like a viral video of it because they just fucking lost their minds, basically. And it just doesn't, like, you can watch interviews with Kubrick explaining the ending, and it just sounds like he's high off his ass. Like, it doesn't, none of this movie really makes sense. It has some big theme about like progress of humanity and evolution, and like that's just not accessible, honestly. Like, you know, like so, and they're even Kubrick and Arthur C. Clarke made this movie, like the story together, and they didn't even agree on how the story should be. So yeah. The book, yes, they made it at the same time as the movie. So anyway, in conclusion, I hope you'll agree with me that this movie doesn't suck because it has cultural impact, far-reaching vision of the future, really cool visuals and soundtrack. It influenced a lot of other movies that we kind of take for granted, and it's just uncomfortably unsatisfying. And that also just watching something that has a spaceship landing for 5 minutes is worth your time. Anyway, that's my presentation. Thanks, everyone.
I was going to say, Jonathan, you're like a 2001 A Space Odyssey. You want to know why?
Well,
Because you don't
I
suck.
don't suck. Yay.
Everybody used to say that.
I also want to point out that the thing that I found interesting, because I only just recently watched it all the way through, was that it feels like about maybe 3 sort of short films
Yes.
put back to back. So there's like the first segment, and that feels almost like its own thing, and they're all connected, but it feels very episodic.
It really does.
And then it feels like the part where Hal dies feels like the ending of most movies.
Yeah.
And then there's like what, 15 minutes?
Yeah, there's like
Of
15 more
like
minutes.
a whole other thing where he's floating through space and there's weird stuff and it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's really interesting because you don't always see movies that are that specifically segmented, intentionally like sort of chopped up.
It's very jarring, each cut between the story you
Yeah.
feel when they jump.
Yeah.
They have title cards too.
Do they?
Yeah. They have like 6 months later. That kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I guess
Well,
they
one, they have the match cut with the bone and the spaceship.
Yeah.
I don't want to go watch 2001.